G'day mates and welcome back. Today we're going into Power and Revolution and it's 2019 standalone edition. So we're going to jump right on in because I don't like faffing about too much at the start. And we're going to do free rulers mode because it's effectively the main game without worrying about any scenarios or anything like that. And we're going to go for... what country we're going to go for? Well, you guys already know what I'm going to pick because it should be in the video title. I'm going to go for Poland. Now, it's a republic. Most of this won't mean anything to you guys if you're either not into economic stuff at all, or if you are not familiar with this game. But effectively, we don't have nukes. We've got elections in less than a year, which is not particularly fun. Inflation's nice and low. Unemployment is acceptable. Growth is not too shabby, especially compared to the inflation. If growth is ever lower than inflation, you can have a problem. And the rest of it, this stuff I'll explain as we get to it. So we're going to play as Poland. Now I can, in this game, play up to 32 different countries, or 30 different nations, I think. And you can play them all simultaneously, flicking between them, which allows you to really have some global things. Now what I am going to do is turn down turmoil. So turmoil, as you can see by the pop-up here, the degree of reactivity of the people and social groups to unpopular actions by the ruler. They say the middle is normal. But it is outrageous. People will riot, you have massive countrywide riots over something as minor as a tax increase or decrease sometimes. They can just go non-stop. So I think down slightly removes one of the least fun aspects of the game, which is trying to manage riots. So with that, we're going to jump into the game and I'll cut through the loading screen because it can take quite a while sometimes. I'll see you on the other side. There we go, guys. Hashtag me too. Now this is the 2009 edition, and women's issues sort of the, I suppose you'd call the focus of this particular expansion, among a bunch of other things. Now this is our country. That's Poland. This is the rest of Europe. They're all green. All the cities based on size, roughly based on population and I suppose influence, with capitals being a lot larger. So London and Oslo, despite having completely different populations, 454,000 versus 7.42 million, are they're still capitals, so they're the same size. Now this is Poland. Our capital is Warsaw with 1.6 million people. We've got there's a weird looking face. The hell happened to him? So I've never seen that before, but the guy's been stretched out. Carbon tax is a new thing for this particular edition. Now I have paused it. At normal speed, one day will take 30 seconds, which is both really fast when everything starts happening at once, and also mind-numbingly slow when you start building a power plant. And it's going to take 360 days plus to build. Ports might take 510 days. It's a long time. Let's have a quick look at what we've got here. Now our goals for this particular series will be, as the name of the title says, Poland can into space. So I would like to build a Polish space program, and that comes in here. We'll need to build a launch pad to start with. We can team up with other people, but I'd really like to go it alone if possible. And then we open up a bunch of programs. We actually have a look here at the space thing. You can add a whole bunch of missions. We can send some into the space program, to the space station. All different countries currently doing it. Now these are, I believe, historical, or not historical. These are accurate missions that are currently ongoing or theorized to be ongoing. I don't know huge amounts about some of them. For example, I think Space X, or they call it Space Y, they call it in this one. SpaceX is Mars 1, permanent base on Mars. Now there isn't an actual mission of that happening, but they do have stated goals that that's happening. And apparently they've got all the tech to do it, which is interesting. We're probably not going to beat them. But there are a whole bunch of missions you can do, something from sending a probe into Jupiter to landing a permanent base on the moon. You can do a whole range of different things. Permanent base on the moon. I think you can actually do permanent bases on many. No, it's a manned mission. Let's see, Ganymede. Can we get a permanent base on Ganymede? No, you can't. So permanent bases seem to be on Mars and the moon only. Probably a couple of others. But for now, I'm really not sure exactly how far I'm going to take it. We'll see how the interest level goes, but I definitely want to get Poland into space. Just choked on my words there for a second. Now, let's have a quick look at our economic situation. Currently, Our deficit is 2% of GDP, which is relatively high. It means every year we're spending more than we're taking in. So our debt, which is different to our deficit, what's our debt? Public debt is $274 billion. That's 50% of our total economic output. If we taxed every single dollar moving around our economy by 50%, didn't spend a single thing on anything else, we could pay off our debt if we took off half of it. That was a bad explanation, but I'm sure you can get what I mean. So 50% of our total domestic product is debt. And we need to... looks like they're shrinking in terms of total tax revenue between... this should be last year, 2018, so it seems to be a bit of a display glitch there. What is our current debt burden in terms of who we're borrowing the money from? All nice low interest rates for the most part. They're a tad high, but what our debt rating now, as this drops, as you get lower and lower, these agencies they give you a lower rating. You end up having to pay a higher interest rate, and of course different countries are asking for more. If we borrowed money from Taiwan, they would be asking for a significantly large interest rate. Now, I don't believe we can decide who we borrow from. I'm sure there are ways to do that. But how are we going to tackle this without too much talking and faffing about? I said I wouldn't do a lot of that. We need to change our budget. Currently, we're spending $103 billion, not million, billion dollars, and we're taking in 91. So we're short by about 12 or 13 billion dollars. And of course, even if we take, say, 15 billion extra, if we raised a tax that gave us 15 billion, if we gave an extra 11 or 12% to the VAT tax, it still would only be paying off our public debt in a tiny fraction. It takes 100 years to pay it off. So debt is a messy thing in this game. You can pay it off eventually. It's hard work though. And now our government, let's go into our government here because that's going to talk about our direction here slightly. We are a republic, which is not hugely relevant. But it does mean we have elections, parliamentary regime. Conservative rightist is our political party. So our dude here, who for some reason is not being displayed. Poland seems to have a couple display errors. I've not seen this error before. Ignore this little button down here. This is a cheating sort of a thing. It's a DLC that you can buy for the game that allows you to tweak values, but it also importantly allows you to see some important values that aren't displayed in the game. This game has an appalling way of displaying information, and unfortunately this is very useful for some of them, so I'll try not to use in fact I won't be using it to change anything, but occasionally I will use it just to see whether I'm aligned with a political party, or for example how democratic we might be. I can have a look at Poland and say that we are pretty democratic. Nigeria is like a 43 or something like that, even though they have elections. So that value is not displayed anywhere, and I can't actually change or edit it, but it is useful to know if you're trying to do something. Either way, we are, as I was saying, we're conservative rightist. Now our party, this guy here, belongs to that party. We can switch parties. I can't actually see my face. We can't switch parties, we can switch parties, but if we do that, it's a huge, big rigmarole. So I'm going to try to stay as a conservative rightist. We need to keep our party on side. What that means is typically righties, right-wing people, are less likely to support something like an increase to company taxes. They're not going to support things like an increase to not the VAT tax, increase to the higher brackets of taxes. You can't just throw that to 100%. If I poll the party and the people, you can see that, well, actually all of them are against it because it's a massive tax. But as an example, right-wing parties would hate that a lot less. Let's just do 1% and have a look at poll again, what the people in the parliament think. You can see here the left-wing party obviously supports that. And then these guys tend to support it less and less as we go across. Although, interestingly, the parties are not perfectly aligned there. But roughly you can see that the left, the super ultra left, support it blanket. They love it. Although there's only one seat there. Whereas everybody else is a bit all over the place. Now, the people don't particularly like increasing taxes either. But dropping, effectively what I'm saying is, this is not a very structured presentation, but you guys will get to it or you won't. Dropping things like inheritance tax and raising things like the VAT tax, which is considered a flat tax, tends to be more in favour of the conservative parties, whereas if I go socialist or something like that, they don't like the raising of the VAT tax because it's more of a regressive tax. I could probably drop the gun tax. So effectively, I need to grow the economy to really do it. Taxing my way out of this is going to be somewhat more difficult unless I pick particularly palatable taxes such as, I don't know what right-wing parties would necessarily like. Probably a tobacco tax, things like that are vice taxes. You can sometimes get a little bit through, although as you'll see, there's not a huge amount. Even 10% of the packet's only $9 million. And we're over 12 or $13 billion in the hole. So let's start time ticking along. You don't want to start taxing on day one. Let's have a look what we've got here. It looks like a major display bug for all of these people. Yeah, okay, so we've got to get our CO2 emissions down quite considerably. CO2 capture is a technology that we do not have at this stage. We cannot build anything, although our research will allow us to develop some quite interesting future tech. I believe you can get combat robots at a much later part of the game, although at this speed here, you can see the time ticking along. It'll take a long time. Now, North Macedonia wants to meet us. That's fine. I'll put that in the diary. It'll give us a pop-up when he's ready. Now, we need to look at space research. I'm not going to bother about debt too much in this particular playthrough. All we need to do is get into space. I want to keep us solvent, but otherwise, I'm not going to bother too much. Now, we're already involved in a whole range of other European Space Agency missions. So it says we're a member, although how much we're actually paying, it doesn't really say. It just says European. It's coming from the French Guyana? They're down here, the space launch thing. Down in French Guyana, which is that it there? There it is. This is where we're launching from. There it is. Yeah, so we'll actually launch the rockets from there at the date when they come up. You can zoom in quite far. Some nice cute little 3D models down here. But that's it's French territory that we are going to be launching from for the European Space Agency. Closer to the equator you get, the easier it is in terms of delta V. Won't go into that, but watch some Kerbal Space Program. You guys will figure it out. It's not really orbital mechanics. So what we need to do is consider that we've got an election coming up shortly. So 317 more days. I've been playing for 3 or 4 days. Now, there are different ways. We can actually make ourselves a dictator appointed for life. That's unlikely to go through. The people aren't necessarily relevant here. I poll them anyway just to see how much they'll like me. I'll deal with those in a second. The parliament is what actually passes these things here. So they're not going to approve it. There's no way I can get them to approve that. You can make reforms and try and tempt them up, and there are other ways of getting around that. For example, you can term the powers of Parliament and give them a consultative role. But again, they need to vote on that, and surprisingly, this is doable. I could theoretically what's this, organic farming? Yeah, don't care about that at the moment. Endocrine disruptors, don't care about that. And I must inform you that I'll come on to terrorism in a second. I could theoretically do this right now. This might be a little bit of fun. Now, Parliament, I need to butter them up slightly. They might enjoy having their term extended. They are. Let's see if I up it even further. No, they don't want to vote for too long because they think that's an abuse of power. But they would like, I'm recognising I'm spending a whole bunch of money. This is not coming from my budget, but from somewhere else, which I'll deal with later. They would actually pass that. So I can do a little test here. They may do this. If I create a reform, we're going to call this the Toothless Tiger Reform. And what we're going to be doing is making Parliament in for longer, but completely toothless and unable to do anything. Ideally, you wouldn't do this, but I'm going to have a bit of fun here. Give me a bit more power. We're going to add this to the reform now. Will it pass? That's the question. Oh, it's very, very close. It may not pass. Let's think about what else we can do here. I could withdraw this. No, they don't like that. I think I'm going to have to withdraw this. Oh, actually, proportional. Currently, it's a majority election. but they can go to proportional voting. They do seem to like that. So if I add that to the reform, it may change enough people. No, it doesn't. They're not against it. These people are mostly for it. I could spend time sitting down and talking to them, but it's not going to work. My popularity is not enough, and Parliament is just not going to accept it. Although the fact that some of them will is scary. Very, very scary. Have I withdrawn that? Yes, I have withdrawn it. Okay, that's good. Cancel that reform. Now that will hit our opinion because people aren't particularly happy with what we've done, and obviously withdrawing reforms that won't pass is an admission of defeat. But that's just a bit of fun. That's some of the possibilities in this game. You can do that with a little bit of effort. Now let's start getting things done here. What we need to do is we need to boost the economy. Let's have a quick look at what our economy is made up of. So currently we have 5% of our GDP comes from agriculture. Agriculture tends to not be particularly valuable. It's a lot of raw resources. It is important in terms of food. Cannabis is currently illegal, but we can legalize it and then start cultivating it in our country. Anything with an X on it, ignore all activities, but anything with an X on it, we are not currently producing in the country. So we're not making cocoa or coffee simply because of the climate, although we could theoretically start subsidizing it and growing it. That guy's having a meeting, we'll go to him in a second. We could theoretically start subsidizing it and grow in greenhouses. It's going to be difficult to get up. You could pump heaps of money into it and really take it. Again, grapes. We're not growing grapes here, and potentially not making wine. No, we're not making wine either. Which is interesting. It gives us an opportunity, an avenue for the wine tax. It's not going to hurt our own economy. It's only going to hurt the purchasing power of the people who drink wine. So that is a potential income source for us in terms of tax. I don't know how much we'll get on the wine tax though. But that's that there. Let's have another look at the rest of our economy. I'll come back to this meeting in a second. I've paused time, so nothing's going to happen there. Important to get a good grasp of our industry. Now, the second sector, GDP of, well, we've got 20% of our GDP comes from industry. So we're fairly industrialized, but it's only 25%, 5 and 20 for industry and agriculture combined. So it looks like we're mostly a service-based economy, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. Now we don't build airplanes, don't build aircraft carriers. We do make armed pickup trucks. We don't really understand what this is exactly. I think we're selling this to, well, I imagine we're selling this to terrorists or something like that. I don't know exactly where it goes, but we're selling 5.8 million of them, and somehow there's only a trade balance of 308,000 American dollars. I put it in American dollars just to keep it standardized. You can put it as the country that the currency of the country you're in, but it can get confusing. Interestingly enough, a lot of it seems to be we're not consuming any, and yet we're not exporting. I don't really understand how these numbers can be different if there's no local consumption, but that's an odd number. Bauxite, biotech. What are we producing a lot of? Let's actually have a quick look at what we're producing a lot of. So I'll go to sort by GDP percentage, building, housing, and roadway construction. So the construction industry is our largest one, followed by chemical industry, utility vehicles like vans and whatnot, plastics, steel, automobiles. I'm not really aware of too many Polish cars, but apparently we produce quite a bit, and we're actually not producing enough for our own balance of trade, so we're importing as well. So another thing to look at is what's our... we're not exporting a lot. Or importing a lot, actually. So yeah, these things are a bit of a problem here. We're not producing pharmaceuticals, and we are importing them. Video games. So we don't really produce a lot here. I don't think bumping up industry is necessarily the way to go just yet. Do we have a steel industry? I think we did. Let's have a look at this one here. Steel is interesting. It is quite valuable. You can see $7 billion in sales, 1.6 billion in profits. We can really bump that up if we... So total income tax, it's creating 2.338% of our revenue. So it's a pretty big sector, grand scheme of things. Let's have a quick look at this service sector here. Now, this one is, before I go in there, we're making... yeah, nearly 60% of the GDP of our country is coming from services. So things like advertising is, we're producing enough advertising agencies and whatnot to actually export it. So you might be living in Germany and you hire a Polish advertising agency to go and do the work for you. Things like that. Low profit considering the sales, so very low productivity index. We could start and subsidize attraction parks. They require electricity, fast food, and electrical materials to really to actually produce anything. So we could subsidize them. We could nationalize them or not. Lottery and bets, you see here, that little symbol means that we have partially nationalized it. We are a minority shareholder in the gambling and, of course, postal service and railway transportation in Poland. So we're actually gaining some revenue from that. You can adjust the degree of nationalization. You can completely have it under public control, and of course you can privatize ones that you already own for different amounts. Sometimes if they're losing money, it's a good idea to offload them to the private sector. What is our biggest producer? Services. Okay, so generalized services is good, and then road transportation, and then internet services. Interesting. Personal transportation. I don't know how that can be a service. I suppose that's taxis. Banks, tourism, hotels. So there's a few tourists coming to our country, but for the most part, we're actually providing services to other people. We're like call centers and whatnot. Requires paper. Services are an interesting one because they require nothing. They can create themselves out of nothing other than raw people, but they also require themselves to grow, which is interesting. So as you get more and more services, they start growing exponentially, provided there's demand and profit there. You can see it's a decent productivity. They're making $14 billion in profit, which is 20% of our income tax, just from this one sector, which is a huge amount. It's an absolutely massive amount, and we really do need to potentially consider subsidizing this one. Although that's a bit of a left-wing thing typically, or not left-wing necessarily, but non-free market. I think subsidizing is non-free market. So I'm not sure if our party is necessarily free market or not. We could consider exonerating it, but that would, which is providing tax exemptions, but that would hurt our income quite significantly. For now, I'm not going to play with that. I'm going to see if anyone in the comments has any suggestions on how to grow the Polish economy. I've not played Poland before, so we'll see what that is. That's not relevant yet. I'll go to terrorism after this meeting.
I didn't come empty-handed. In fact, I wanted you to see.
Yes, okay, so the terrible voice acting, but that's what the faces are meant to look like. You can see here, this face hasn't been properly applied to the model in the little mini one, but it is working properly on the big one. So North Macedonia, now he wants to, now this changes depending on who initiated the thing. If we'd gone to them, we can sell to them. In this case, he wants to sell to us. So we currently produce 8.7 million steel, but we consume a lot more. So we're buying it from the international market at roughly an average price of about 1,285 American dollars per ton. Now they're selling it much lower, so obviously we can make a deal here. They want to sell theirs at a higher price. We want to buy it at a lower price. So this is only going to help our economy if we can get a lower price here, because our people are buying it regardless. It's not our budget personally that's doing it, but our people are buying this. Now, if we can negotiate, push him to a lower one. Let's say, now there's a bit of a bug lately where you can't negotiate very well on purchasing, but we'll see what happens. Let's see if we can get 944. Doesn't want that. Let's go 992. 992. Let's try 1,047. There you go. So he's going to sell us a fair bit for 1,000. Now we were buying it for about 1,200. So our people are saving $200 per ton of steel from now on to the next 5 years for at least part of. I don't want to buy anything else just yet from him. I might come back to them. But we're now buying steel slightly cheaper. Let's have a quick look. It's a bit of a laggy game, and it doesn't help that I'm recording as well, but it does make a huge difference to recording. It's always been a bit shitty. Steel, we're now... contracts, there we go. Let's have a look at the contracts between all nations. Come on. Why do you have such a shitty interface? What? Maybe because it's paused, it hasn't updated yet. Huh. Well, I know we agreed. Maybe it needs to update over the day. Again, this game is somewhat buggy. But there is a... Okay, there we go. The contract has been completed. Thank you. It's our first contract, I know. Yeah, the assessment is a little bit average. It's let's have a look here. So it's a slightly lower rate. They're pretty happy about that. But, oh, okay. I bought too much. I wasn't paying attention to that. I thought it was the right amount, but they must have changed the amount, or wasn't being a particularly competent player. Either way, we're buying in too much steel. So what's happening now is we're likely undercutting our own steel industry, which is perhaps not that good. Hyperloop will come to that later. Let's have a look at our total consumption. Does it say? It's hard to get information on this game. Where is... As a percentage, we're producing 0.5% of the steel worldwide. Maybe I can get... Here we go. Volume by year. Okay. Where are we? No. Oh, it's a pain in the ass, this display. Trying to get any information out of them is like pulling teeth. Either way, we're buying in too much than what we need, which is fine, because anything that requires steel now can get it for slightly cheaper, and will ideally, I don't care, will ideally start to boost us up. Hyperloop is interesting because we do not have the technology for it, but you can build Hyperloop on the map once you've researched it. Let's go into terrorism. I'm sort of jumping all over the place here, but the game pulls you in 100 different directions. Now, they did mention terrorism before. Let's have a quick look at them here. We've got the Russian Mafia and the Polish Fighters for Integrity. Now, these are two different types of terrorists. You can see here 2 buttons, whereas if I go, if I go into these guys, you've got the file. You can actually pull up people in the nation who are running, we think are running, we're not sure, we don't have the information on it. I could get the information by cheating, having a look, but I won't do that. Now, these 2 people, again, they should have faces, entities that the game has created, and they may or may not be working. And as we monitor them over time, if I come back here and check them, we can see a list of what they've done, whether they've made inquiries to rent a van, whether they've had a violent altercation with a domestic partner, whether they've played a video game, various bits and pieces. We can see what they've been doing. And if we think they're the right ones, we can proceed with the rest. 9 times out of 10 it's the wrong person, but we may have somebody. It really depends on our budget here for agent training and fight against terrorism, counter-terrorism. Decent budget. It's not going to put us on the top of the world. We're not going to be cracking terrorist agencies left, right and centre, but we might be able to get them in. We'll try and infiltrate them as well. That will give us more information. Now, this almost always fails and the person dies, but worthwhile giving it a go. So if we can get in there, we can dismantle them from internal. Now, the Russian Mafia is a little more difficult to pull down. They are present in a whole bunch of countries and they're not really from us necessarily. These ones, you can infiltrate them, you can track them down, but at the moment they are operating from another country. So we go to, do we have any networks, foreign spy networks in Russia? We do not. Don't care about Algeria, Bangladesh, Belarus could be interesting. China, maybe. Don't care about them. Iran, I don't care about. Malaysia, Nigeria. I'll keep North Korea because they could be a world threat. Pakistan, oh, they might have terrorists in Pakistan, so I'll keep them. Sudan, we don't care. Syria, we will keep. Thailand, we don't need. Venezuela and Vietnam, we do not need. Okay, so those are gone. We've got 167 agents with which to just put around. I want to put them in Russia. We're going to start putting spies in Russia. QRST Russia. And what our goal is going to be, there are a whole bunch of different things. You can approach other political parties. You can get the unions on board to protest or anything like that. You can support terrorists. But in this case, we're going to dismantle terrorist groups. The Russians aren't particularly going to like us having people on their territory. Let's say 30 guys can do that. not particularly like us having people in there, but if we do successfully dismantle something, relations will sort of be a bit neutral. They'll be like, okay, well, you did a good thing, but don't do it again. And let's get everybody up as much as we can. Belarus, I want to get up because they're close to us. And I think we're also going to dismantle terrorist groups. China, I'd actually prefer to do some industrial spying. And we'll bump that up to 30 as well. Oh, we've got some intelligence on a person. Let's have a look at that in a second. North Korea. No priority goals for North Korea. I'm just going to leave 10 guys in there for now. Pakistan, we want to... Let's go and dismantle terrorist groups in Pakistan. We'll get that up to, say, 50. And then we'll max it out in Syria, which just coincidentally happens to be 100. But you can go up to 1,000 if you want, or more. And we're also going to dismantle terrorist groups in Syria. Let's have a quick look, slow things down. We've got a lot of pop-ups happening. Iran has created a new space program. Interesting. They're going to Venus. We can have a look at that later. Highway system taxes. Okay, so Minister for Finance thinks we can make a shit ton of cash there. And of course, China has just discovered a new technology, which is a clothing fiber that releases its own fragrance, but they're keeping it confidential, so we don't know much about it, and we cannot use it. But if they Chinese clothing, we can buy, which is interesting. So they're going to continue making it, and we can buy it and have high quality clothing for our people.
We have obtained some information on this terror.
Yes, but we don't actually have the ability to produce our own clothing from it. We can't buy the fiber directly. Yeah, I don't care about that. That'll come in later time. And now we've got two that we missed earlier. Electric versus gasoline. Effectively telling us that we can slowly convert our country over to electric cars. And of course, we did get that person under surveillance. Let's have a quick look at them. Now, they've told us there's new information for this person. No, wrong one. Polish Fighters for Integrity. Okay, so one person's been dropped off, and now we've got a new person who's come back, is Ludwig. So the other person that we were surveying was not relevant. This person, though, has bought a second mobile phone. I think that's a little bit suspicious. If we went to proceed with an arrest now, nothing would happen. They'd just have to release him. It would also tip him off that we know what's going on. So he'd be a little bit more cautious in future. He hates us. They both hate us, probably why we're surveying them. And we think that they could be people in this illegal organisation. So we'll keep surveying them for now, and we'll figure that out. A whole bunch of other stuff. We can find out who's funding them, etc., etc. They're an extreme right political group. So these are like the neo-Nazi organisation equivalent. You know what? I think I'm going to call this episode here. We're going to come back next time, and we're going to start getting this a little bit more structured. This has been a bit all over the place, trying to dive into the game, but we're going to work on getting our budget a little bit under control next episode, and then we'll start working on the space program probably a little bit after that. But take care, guys. I've been BLXZ. This has been Geopolitical Simulator, first episode of a series, so hit that thumbs up button. Just lets people know that the video is here. I'm not going to harp on about it every single episode. First episode, click the button if you're into it, and we'll get a bit more of this coming up. Take care, guys, and I'll see you around.